beautiful souls, it's Tan here again today with another video for you in the Zodiac Degrees series. And today we're going to be looking at the Zodiac Degrees of Virgo from 22.37 degrees to 28.15 degrees. So this would apply to you if you have anything in your natal chart, planets, points, or angles in these degrees of Virgo, as well as if you're approaching this from a human design or gene key perspective. This is gate 6 in human design and gene key number 6 in the gene keys. So I have made an introduction video to this particular series. I'll provide a link to that for you up above in the description box below, so you can check that out first to kind of see my approach to this particular Zodiac Degree series and then come back to this video. So if you have these particular archetypes, your dream arc vision keeper totem is the dove. With this archetype, you're moving from, at the shadow level, conflict, to diplomacy at the gift level. This is about dropping your defenses. Ultimately, at the highest destiny for you, this is an energy of peace. It is about building the body of glory. Yes, your dream arc totem vision keyword is going to be the dove. At the fear level, it is the squid. At the life key is the hedgehog. The I-Ching hexagram that correlates with this archetype is called conflict. It is heaven over water, the right timing of creative energy to communicate with love. The genetic code dot associated with this degrees is glycine. It is responsible for balancing pH levels. This is part of the ring of alchemy, responsible for breaking old patterns of conditioning to reach a state of karmic release for the highest self to get into the actual physical body. The programming partner of this archetype is gate 36, gene key 36, which is the Zodiac Degrees of Pisces, from 22.37 degrees of Pisces to 28.15. And the programming partner is basically the opposite point of this archetype in the zodiac wheel, and it is an energy that offers balance and a complement to this particular archetype. In human design, this gate is located in the emotional solar plexus. It is part of the channel of fruitfulness, 59.6. So first we're going to talk a little bit about the dove itself, some interesting facts, the characters of the dove, and how that particular genetic strand is imprinted in your character. So the dove is a part of the Columbidae bird family, which includes doves and pigeons. So this video may probably apply to both of these birds. So as we all know, the dove is mainly known for being a messenger, especially during war, because the dove is able to find their way back home to their owner or where they need to go. They can navigate long distances, thousands of kilometers, and still find a way to get back. But they're also really fast flyers, so they're pretty hard to kind of shoot down as well. So the dove at that point was the ideal bird to be used as messengers. They also are a symbol of peace since the ancient times because they have an unusual amount of trust for human beings. They're very friendly with human beings, they're very approachable, and they can be living near human beings without the type of fear or the need to defend as much as other birds would be. And in the myths of Aphrodite, or Venus, she's usually seen with the dove. So there are a couple of birds, such as the pigeons and doves, as well as the flamingos and the penguins, that produce what is called crop milk with regards to the biology of birds for their young. And a crop milk is usually secreted from the esophagus of the bird because, you know, birds have this space within them that's called a crop in order to store food in there, but their milk is also produced there. So there are a couple of birds, such as the dove, that gives milk to their young through this particular part of their anatomy. Generally, of course, doves are monogamous and tend to remain together for their entire lives. Now, the most interesting thing about doves and pigeons, and I feel this is particularly important in this strand of the dove genetics, is that what they can do that's different from other birds is they can drink water without having to tip their heads back in order to swallow the fluid. Whereas other birds, when they are taking water into their beak and their mouths, they have to tip the head back and allow gravity to take in the water according to the gravitational pull. But the dove can do this magic of going against gravity. To me, this seems like a symbol for the dove in being able to manage friction. Because when you're going against gravity, you have to cause a bit of friction. And this is an important part of this particular archetype that we're going to keep talking about throughout the video. So if you have this particular archetype, your personality may be that you have a very loving, peace-loving, peaceful type of a mindset to start off with. You definitely have an ability to communicate diplomatically, but because you have the ability to be able to see conflicts really clearly in your life, and yet you are striving for peace, you may be someone at the shadow level who is willing to do anything for peace and harmony in your environment, even if it means repressing your emotions or brushing that away in order to please other people. And this is not healthy, because this is emotional bypass. And when you do this, you may find that in your life, people don't really trust you because they're not really sure if you're being authentic with your likability and your ability to please them at the expense of your own emotions. Or you may be somebody at the shadow level, someone who really can't control your emotions and you can kind of lash out from time to time. But that's of course at the shadow of this particular archetype. So therefore, let's have a look at what it's like to navigate and work with your shadow vibration of this archetype of conflict. So of course, all you Virgo archetypes out there, Virgo is in astrology known to be the sign of analytical abilities, the ability to really dig deep and look at the details and kind of pick out the details of various different facets of life. But at the lower vibration of this, what happens with conflict is that because you can see the polarities, the right and the wrong clearly, and you know, Virgo is a sign that can also rule the qualities of being analytical and critical and a little bit judgmental. So when you see something as black and white after dissecting it, or seeing something as right or wrong, this is the cause of conflicts in your life, in yourself, in your relationships. One of the biggest contrasts that we do see in the world right now is the contrast of man and woman. And this is why this particular archetype actually has a sexual undertone to it, which we'll kind of talk about in the video. Because once you see yourself as being one part of the same coin, what tends to happen is that there's a certain defensiveness that comes up because you have to defend for your position or your point of view or your side of the coin. So we can see with this archetype the defenses that can come up between men and women in our society, the separation between rich and poor, the separation between different types of religion. These particular types of defensiveness unconsciously, at the energy vibration of it, instills guilt and shame onto the person that you are coming into conflict with, right? Because if you're seeing your particular point of view or the way you're going about your life as right, and you defend that, unconsciously in the negative spaces, it's causing this shame and guilt on the other person because you're, without saying it, kind of giving off in the negative spaces that the other person's way of life or point of view is therefore wrong. But also unconsciously, this is instilling guilt and shame onto yourself because there's always going to be a part of us where as human beings and as living beings, we don't want to inflict pain or suffering onto another person. So by doing this, by making the other person feel guilty, you're gonna feel a little bit guilty as well. So collectively speaking, according to the gene keys, this archetype is responsible for what is we can see in the world as war. And one of the biggest wars that we do see right in the world is the war of the sexes. So the way I feel, I see the different genders in the two genders, biological genders in the world, is that men and women can't be equal in terms of their physical strength. In certain cases, some women are definitely much stronger than men in terms of their physical strength, but that is through particular training programs. The moment that with regards to the biology of our bodies when we are born, the strength of the so-called female gender is not going to be the same as the male gender. However, this is only with regards to the physical strength. When it comes to mental strengths, mental abilities, the emotional side, all the other various spiritual aspects of us as beings, we are all different and we are all equal because we're all different. We're equal in our differences anyways. I do feel like a more practical approach from various different perspectives can actually offer a balance or a rationale to this kind of issue that's been spewing in our society for a very long time. Defenses as well against other countries, for example, creating boundaries is another part of the lower vibration of this energy, because that does cause war and it affects the economy, because the money that we have to put into war, that's a lot of money we have to invest into weaponry where we could have used that money elsewhere. So that's just kind of on the more collective aspect of this archetype. Individually speaking, the defenses that we have with regards to our personal life is generally coming from defense mechanisms that we had to employ, all of us, due to certain stressful situations or traumas within childhood. And defense mechanisms are associated with this particular archetype. But these defense mechanisms are ultimately something that we can all decondition from. And I feel like this archetype is kind of working towards that deconditioning, because if we act on our insecurities unconsciously by employing defense mechanisms in our adult lives and as we go throughout our lives, it can really affect the relationships that we have with our loved ones, even with our children, if we were to have children. Sometimes when our defenses are up, we can be self-protective in a sense that if you have this archetype, you might allow for peace and resolution only when it emotionally satisfies you in terms of your insecurities, rather than accepting peace and resolution when it is logical or when it is coming from a place of rationale. Water is a symbol across various studies of emotions. So if we look at the symbol of the dove or the pigeon and how they can go against gravity and allow that friction and kind of pass and transcend through that friction when they are drinking water, when they are drinking their emotions. This is a symbolism for being able to end emotional conflict through emotional power. Because inner emotional chaos and turmoil can't lead to an outer peace. If there's still something going on inside of you that you are suppressing or resisting or denying with regards to your emotions, it's going to be projected in your environment and there won't be peace in your environment. Real emotional strength with this archetype for you comes from being able to transcend, and transcend means to go through, like the dove. It has to allow that emotional friction to happen before the water drops into its belly fully and kind of surrenders and releases. So the release of emotional karma at a cellular level, for example, emotional purging, can be an important part of you and your life. And what happens then when you have gained emotional security, inner emotional security, is that you're able to allow for diplomacy to happen within the conflicts in your environment, because even in a very intense encounter with other people, if you're able to have that emotional awareness, meaning that you've worked with your emotions, you've sat with it, you know how it feels, like you've allowed it to flow, you've done the purging process, the awareness will exist now. Meaning that when there's a very intense conflict going on in your environment, you're going to be somebody who is now aware of the emotions of other people, and as well as the rising emotions within yourself. And you know where that's coming from now, because you've traced your past, you've done the karmic work. So for example, if you suddenly feel very triggered by somebody making certain comments about you, instead of immediately getting into the conflict because you're defending yourself and your feelings at that point, you now realize that you may be triggered by particular words or opinions of people because it was something that maybe your parents in the past, they said to you. And you've worked with your past, you've worked to purge from that. So now you're aware that, oh, this is why I'm so triggered by these particular comments. You know what? I'm gonna recede back a little bit and see what can be the best objective solution, rational solution in this case. So real harmony and diplomacy comes not from avoiding the situation and allowing the other person to get what they want and you're sacrificing your feelings and emotions, but it comes from being able to diplomatically put the issue on the table and talk about it and make negotiations in a diplomatic way until both parties are feeling satisfied and like that's fair. So peace doesn't actually exist without war. It is necessary to have war if you would like peace, but the type of war that you're going to have doesn't necessarily mean it has to be one where both people are acting on their emotions. The workable type of war with this archetype, if you have it, is one of this particular yin and yang archetype, meaning a balance of aggression and regression. When somebody is being aggressive, the other party recedes back first to allow the energy of the other party to flow. Then the other party is, their energy is eventually going to recede back into the yin energy, to the regressive passive energy anyways, because the intensity of the yang, the aggressiveness, it can't last forever. Energy comes and goes in cycles. Once the other party has receded back with their energy dies down, then you can come in with the more assertive energy this time. But the assertive energy that we're talking about is one where you've employed strategy, diplomacy, and tact, not one that's coming from your defense. And if you're working with this yin-yang energy right, it's probably not coming from a defense anyways, because when we have defenses up, one person is coming with the yang energy, the aggressive energy, and then immediately the other party feels that they have to immediately defend themselves, so they go in with the yang energy. So we have two yang forces in a conflict with each other. So that is the aggressive side of war, and that's not going to lead to peace. But if we have the other opposite end, which can happen as well, is both are yin. Everything's okay, I'm going to sacrifice my feelings and emotions, I don't want to face the conflict. We have two yin. And that's another kind of suppression. So we need a consistent flow of good yin and yang energy to flow. So diplomacy, there's a formula for diplomacy, and that is honesty plus timing. Stating what you need to say with honesty, with good use of words, great formulation of sentences, but at the right time. That's real diplomacy. And you are an expert at this. This particular practice allows you to penetrate. Okay, now we're talking a little bit about sexual penetration as well. Because when we have good yin and yang energy flowing, we have good ability to sort of penetrate and receive in a way that is satisfying for both parties. We don't have the kind of, penetration blockage, or I'm not sure if this really works, but the need to have the penetration but then it's not coming. You know that you are vibing at the gift of this particular archetype if you are satisfied sexually in a romantic relationship. Because a romantic relationship with a really healthy sex life is allowing of that vulnerability, dropping your defenses, and really allowing that wholeness to merge with another person. So when we bump this up a notch to reach the highest destiny of peace, you are somebody who understands that peace is already here. It already exists. It's in how you feel. Peace is not really just, it's not only just about employing certain tactics and implementing certain rules in your community environment to get peace, but if everybody cultivates their inner peace the way that you have done when we talked about the gift transcending the fear or the shadow to the gift, you've employed inner peace, and that bleeds into your environment. It can almost feel like your emotions are floating above your body. There's higher consciousness that is always aware of how you feel. So if you are feeling angry and you can say to yourself, I am angry, the fact that you can say that you are angry means you're not angry. It means there must be a higher consciousness looking at you and saying, you are angry. Because what you are is just a being. You just are. There's a higher consciousness above you, and there's the lower version of you that's going through various feelings, and there's a higher consciousness that can see that it's not you. It's a state of your being. Sometimes the state is anger. Sometimes the state is frustration. Sometimes the state is joy. Different states, but they're not who you are. This particular archetype has the ability to reach what is called the rainbow body, the light body, or the rainbow body. And this is a really interesting topic for me to get into, looking into the rainbow body, because the rainbow body is originally a Tibetan Buddhist concept. And it's not something that can only be done by monks, and you have to do periods of practices and studies of meditation to get a rainbow body. You don't have to do that. In the news, there's been news about particular, shall we say, monks or people who practice meditation, that after they've died, their body still is able to be maintained in a particular posture. And particularly around the heart, it still remains warm. And this monk is the 16th Karmapa Rajun Dorji. Sorry, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, but he's basically been following the rainbow body tradition. And so the concept of the rainbow body is that our own bodies is formed by Legos, or building blocks of reality. Earth, fire, water, air, and space. Underneath these particular elements, there lies the true nature of these elements, which is light and energy. And yes, so basically in our bodies, there are, various energy points that can be activated. They're called meridians, and they can be activated through acupuncture to allow energy to flow better in the body. And so this is the kind of, with this tradition, considered to be the underlying element for the other kind of more obvious elements that we're looking at with regards to the body. With regards to where we all came from in a space of timelessness before we came into Earth, where there's gravity on Earth. These meditation practices of the rainbow body traditions states that during particular types of meditation, what you could actually do with your body is reverse the gravitational pull. And once you do that, you activate the light beneath the elements that are kind of more condensed in this material reality with regards to gravity. So you could actually collapse gravity, and if you're really into this part of your chart, you can basically refine the dense matter and elements into light and energy. That's what you're ultimately doing with this archetype. And I have a very funny story about this, because my grandma is somebody who does a lot of meditation, and she considers herself to be a Buddhist, and she spends like 30 years kind of at the temples doing a lot of meditative practices. And she once told me a story of how she was like in this very deep meditation for several hours, and she said that she could actually feel her body floating up, but she surrendered to the process, and so she continued to meditate. But the moment that she came back into awareness, she opened her eyes, she found that she wasn't in the same place that she was in when she started the meditation. So she said that her body was almost kind of like floating because it was very light. She was kind of floating to another place. So maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe she experienced a bit of this rainbow body type of an experience. There's various different techniques that you can practice, not just meditation, of course, some tantric practices or some type of acupuncture or activating your meridians through different types of massages that may be able to allow this energy to flow better in your body. And I feel like, you know, even if you don't get to a phase where you're completely rainbow bodied, you may even experience a change in your body. You may look different. Your skin may be different. You may have more light within you. I don't know. I feel like this is just something interesting to explore, and if you have this archetype, you may be interested. Yeah, and I also think it's really interesting because in the Gene Keys, Richard Rudd even goes further and says that when we look at other life forms that are not actually on Earth, why do they look different from us? It's because of the chemical that's being balanced in their body is different from us. So this archetype may be somewhat of like this start to the human species kind of evolving and actually changing our physical body, if you know that's possible. But you know, I'm gonna have to look into that deeper. But yes, if you have this archetype, I recommend that you also check out my your programming partner. So that's going to be a video for the sign of Pisces from 22.37 degrees to 28.15 degrees of Pisces, and that is in correspondence with Human Design Key 36 and Gene Keys number 36. So if you have this archetype, do comment below and let us know what your experiences have been. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below if you haven't. If you already subscribed, thank you very much for coming along. I do birth chart readings, synastry, relationship readings. All the information is on my website. Make sure to check that out. And yes, I'll see you soon, beautiful souls. Bye!